Welcome to a special presentation of 6 News. For the next hour, we'll examine and review voter information with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, Attorney General Dana Nessel, and your host, Sheri Jones. This is Making It Count.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sheri Jones, and this is Making It Count, a voter information town hall. Thanks to the Michigan Association of Broadcasters, this program is running on stations across the state. So from Marquette to Detroit, we'd like to welcome all of you watching us on air and online. We're going to spend the next hour answering your questions about voting and the 2020 election. We are joined tonight by Michigan's top election official. Jocelyn Benson is our 43rd Secretary of State. She is a graduate of Harvard Law School and an expert on election law. She literally wrote the book on the subject. She's the author of State Secretaries of State, Guardians of the Democratic Process. It's a book about how the people in her job enforce election and campaign finance laws. Secretary Benson, thank you so much for joining us. We are also joined tonight by Dana Nessel. Dana Nessel is Michigan's 54th Attorney General. She is a University of Michigan graduate and Wayne State Law School graduate. As Attorney General, she is the state's Chief Law Enforcement Officer. So her office covers a wide variety of issues, but for tonight, we're going to talk with her about the legal issues surrounding voting and elections. Attorney General Nessel, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So both of our guests tonight are Democrats, and while we will talk about COVID, guns, and political observers as it relates to our polling places, this is going to be a nonpartisan hour. So we are not talking about the pros and cons of Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or any other candidate. We are here tonight to talk about you, Michiganders, and how you can make your vote count. So we're going to start with the basics. Secretary Benson, how can someone really know if they're registered to vote, and what should they do if they're not registered but they still want to vote?
Welcome parents, grandparents, friends, and students as WLNS presents Celebrating the Class of 2020.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sheri Jones. Tonight, we honor the senior class of 2020. Unlike most who came before them because of the global pandemic, their final year of high school came to an abrupt end. For some, their last day came and went without any fanfare. That being said, graduating high school is still a huge accomplishment, and we want to take the next hour to celebrate. Throughout this program, you'll hear speeches from famous coaches, lawmakers, and local valedictorians, all giving the class of 2020 their congratulations and words of wisdom as they transition into the next chapter of their lives. You'll also see pictures of 2020 seniors submitted by the graduates as well as their parents. We begin tonight with the University of Michigan football coach Jim Harbaugh and Michigan State University basketball coach Tom Izzo. Hi, Siobhan. Tom Johnson is a survivor. He worked for the Michigan Department of Corrections fugitive team and caught a very bad case of the coronavirus while he was guarding a prisoner at the hospital. Now, at one point, doctors put his odds of survival at less than 10%, but he beat those odds and recovered. On Tuesday, I was fortunate to be there when he was released to go home. But a celebration it was for Tom Johnson, being cheered by the nurses and doctors who cared for him inside the hospital to outside as a parade of patrol cars from around the state celebrated his victory over COVID-19.
It's the nurses in ICU that kept me alive. It was the doctors that kept me alive. All I had to do was breathe.
Tom was on a ventilator for weeks, and it took every ounce of energy he had just to breathe. But he knows now that he had some help with that. Tom is a triplet. His brothers, Ted and Tim, said they kept him in their thoughts constantly.
There is a unique bond between us three that only we know. And it was difficult, it was very, very challenging. But if anyone could have done it, I knew he could do it.
There was a couple of nights that I spent alone for about a half hour, 45 minutes, semi-meditating, but my thought process was, I'm gonna relax, I'm gonna breathe for Tom. So I continued a couple of nights of just relaxing myself, and I thought anything can help. And if we're having this connection right now, Tom, I'm going to try to help you breathe.
I would talk to him at night.
Mentally. Yep.
Mentally, just trying to
Yes.
send him signals
Yes.
like, hey, stay in there,
Yes.
stay strong.
Absolutely.
And that's
Yep.
how I was communicating with him. And, you know, he heard everyone's prayers, he heard everyone's thoughts, all their support, you know, and he fought through it.
Outside world.
Ted drew his strength not only from his brothers, but from his fiancée, Becca.
Even physical therapy, trying to get out of bed, learn how to walk, do all that stuff. Every step was Becca's step. Her name is obviously Becca again. So she was my inspiration. She was the one. And then I've got an oldest son named Jacob. So I had to get back to my kids. So he's somewhere. Oh, right here. So it was these two right here that kept me going.
I'm just overwhelmed to have him come home. It's been a long month. It's scary.
I know Dad, and I know he's going to fight through and knew he was going to make it. Very happy. I mean, it was definitely a scary past month, but definitely just a huge weight off my chest now. It's a good feeling.
Ted and his family give high praise to McLaren's medical staff and credit them for saving his life.
They have been pulling for him so hard and supporting me and our family through this journey that he wouldn't be here without them.
We're meeting family for the first time today that we've been talking to on the phone for weeks and weeks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I finally see a face. It's heartwarming, and it makes it so much easier to go back to work knowing that we've had such good outcomes.
All right, Tom, you ready
Yeah.
to get out of this joint?
I sure am.
Well, Siobhan, while Tom was in the hospital, his brothers Ted and Tim, who are also in law enforcement, made a Facebook page for him so his family and friends could keep up with his progress, and they called it Tommy Strong. Now they're proud to say Tommy was strong. He fought and he won. Glad to share this good news with you. Siobhan, back to
On behalf of the Ingham County Central Dispatch, the Michigan State University Police Department, and the entire law enforcement community, we would like to thank Chief Kelly Raudebush for her 26 years of dedicated service.
bittersweet words for Kelly Raudebush, Michigan State University's first female chief of police. Her workers say she exemplified courage, strength, and perseverance as a law enforcement leader. But she's depending on those virtues even more now as she battles breast cancer for the second time.
In April of 2015, I felt a lump, went and had it examined and found out that I had stage 2B triple negative breast cancer, and that started my journey there.
After going through a year and a half of surgeries and treatments, Kelly's cancer was gone.
Because when you have early stage cancer, breast cancer, stage 1, 2, or 3, they really throw all the guns right at it, and it's very aggressive because they're seeking a cure, because it can be cured at that point. And so I went through all of that, and it was pretty tough.
Then, after 3 years of being cancer-free, she started coughing and developed a sore throat.
And I looked at my mouth, and I had a mass on the back of my tongue that had never been there before. So I immediately thought, it's back.
Her premonition was right. Her breast cancer had returned with a vengeance. She started getting severe headaches, so doctors did an MRI on her brain, and what they found was devastating.
And I had about 20 lesions in my brain. For that, they treated it with whole brain radiation. And then also they did a PET scan of my body, and it was everywhere. It was in my lymph nodes, it was in my lungs, it's all over throughout my skeleton.
This time, her cancer is stage 4, a terminal diagnosis. Kelly knows she has a rough road ahead of her, but she's going to keep fighting and not let cancer steal her zest for life.
I was really bad off. Like, I'm super surprised, and I think my physicians would agree that I'm still here because of how bad I was.
Kelly is currently taking oral chemotherapy and getting radiation therapy, which is producing results. But she says it's the COVID pandemic that's really making things difficult.
You know, I have what I feel is an end time, an end limit. I don't know when it's going to be, but it's probably sooner than most other people. And, you know, it's sad to think that there's things that I could be doing right now, like my bucket list stuff, and you can't do it because of COVID.
Despite knowing what the future holds, ultimately, she's determined not to give up.
what gives me hope is just knowing that I can have another day with my family. From doing things like this can raise awareness. Listen to your body. Get things checked out. Know that it can happen, even when you're young. And just be aware. I'm going to keep going as hard at life as I can until I can't.
Kelly, the bravery you have shown us in your journey as you continue to battle cancer has been an inspiration to all of us. You and your family will always have an everlasting and eternal support in your fight, and we will be forever by your side.
Live from the studios of Wood TV in Grand Rapids and WLNS TV in Lansing.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this special television and online event. I'm political reporter Rick Albin, live from the Wood TVH studios in Grand Rapids.
And I'm Sheri Jones, news anchor at WLNS TV 6 in Lansing. We know that Michigan, like so many other places around the country, is facing hardships like we've never seen before. We're battling a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, the deadly coronavirus. It's claimed the lives of thousands of Michiganders. Our state has also been the scene of violent rioting from Grand Rapids to Lansing to Detroit and communities in between. Protests escalating in the wake of the death of a black man at the hands of police and a 500-year flood event. Entire communities left submerged after catastrophic failures at dams in mid-Michigan. Tonight, the focus is on moving forward. When we planned this town hall weeks ago, the United States and Michigan were much different places. Over the last week, we've seen our cities in turmoil, a response to the death of a black man killed in police custody.
6 News presents the 8th Congressional District Debate. Here's tonight's moderator, Sheri Jones.
Good evening and welcome to the first debate between the candidates for Michigan's 8th Congressional District. Tonight's debate will feature incumbent Democrat Alyssa Slotkin and challenger Republican Paul Young. Now, for your reference, Michigan's 8th district stretches from Ingham County east, including Livingston and the northern half of Oakland County. It's made up of urban, suburban, and agriculture areas. For years, it was a Republican stronghold. In 2018, Alyssa Slotkin won the seat, beating Republican Mike Bishop, and brought the district across the aisle. Now the first-term Congresswoman is facing a challenger, Republican Paul Young, successfully navigating through the August primary to earn his place on the November ballot. The next question, yes or no? We'll start with you, Paul. Okay. Should marijuana be legalized at the federal level?
Boy, yes or no? The states are all doing it. I think eventually we will get there, yes.
Congressman Slotkin.
Obviously in Michigan, we've legalized it. I do support decriminalizing at the federal level, mostly because at this point, our own marijuana industry in a place like Michigan can't use federally backed banks because it's still a crime at the federal level. We want our marijuana our marijuana industry to be safe and responsible. Whenever there's an unbanked community, as a CIA analyst, I will tell you that's always a place that's rife for opportunities for criminality. We want them to be legal, so yes, I support decriminalizing.
Right. And staying with you, should there be term limits for members of Congress, yes or no?
I would support term limits. I think the Goldilocks approach, I think in some cases, maybe in the state of Michigan, they're a little too short, 3 terms, as soon as you learn the job, 6 years, you're out. But I also don't think we need to have people in for 30 years.
Paul?
It would be quite a constitutional undertaking to have term limits. I can say that I'm quite confident I wouldn't, should I be elected, I won't be there for 30 years. Open to the idea, but not sure it would be an easy thing to do.
Over the years, investigators have followed up on more than 1,400 tips, but the boy's disappearance is still a mystery. Detective Sergeant Jeremy Brewer with the Michigan State Police is now the lead investigator on the case.
This case is getting a lot of attention. It's one of the highest priority cases in Michigan at this point. It still is years later, and it will continue to be until we get some answers.
When the FBI came to us and said, this is what we believe. Very devastating. But that night was probably the first night I had slept through the night. It was almost like a calm came over me that I know where my boys are. If in fact he killed them, I know where they are. They are safe. They are loved, and I will see them again.
And seeing what the boys might look like at the ages of 19, 17, and 15 breaks their mother's heart.
There's always a hole. It doesn't matter what we do.